Good morning and good evening. Welcome all of you to this webinar. I'm Alison, Head of International Business Development of Invest Hong Kong. Today is our great honor to have Mr. Stephen Phillips, Director General of Investment Promotion here to share with us the latest business environment of Hong Kong, as well as highlights of the policy address, which was just announced 2 days ago. So I'm sure you all are eager to hear the updates now. So without further ado, may I now pass the floor to Stephen. Stephen, please.
Alison, thank you very much, and hello everyone, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a wet, windy and wild morning here in Hong Kong, so if you hear the rain battering against the windows, I do apologise. As Alison said, my name is Stephen Phillips and I'm the Director General at Invest Hong Kong, where we help both international and mainland companies set up and grow in our great city. As Alison said, on Wednesday our Chief Executive delivered her annual policy address. And during the presentation this morning, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the key commercial highlights that I think might be of interest to the companies that we work with. The session this morning will be broad rather than deep, but you'll see in the slides that there's lots of resources and materials that you can delve into the detail, what's most relevant to your particular business. So in the next 20 or 25 minutes or so, I'm going to cover off the Hong Kong business environment, how vibrant it is, what those solid foundations are, and I want to share with you our latest surveys, both for international and mainland companies in Hong Kong and startup surveys. I then want to talk about the unlimited opportunities that we see, and I term them routes to growth. So that's opportunities in Hong Kong, the Greater Bay Area, the whole of the country, China, ASEAN, and actually beyond. I'm going to spend some time talking about the 14th five-year plan, which is a national policy. And this is really quite important because Hong Kong plays an important role in the overall development of our country. I'll also touch on another very important policy, the Greater Bay Area, and allied to that, the Chiang Hai Shenzhen Hong Kong zone. Then finally, I'll move on to those key commercial highlights from the policy address. At the end, we'll share the useful resources with you. So let's take a look at the Hong Kong business environment. The Hong Kong SAR government a couple of weeks ago issued a report on the business environment, and it's titled A Place with Unique Advantages and Unlimited Opportunities. And I think that captures so very well the Hong Kong that we see here. Of course, you'll be familiar that Hong Kong exists within the context of China under the one country, two systems principle. And it really is the cornerstone of our economic development. It's the reason why Hong Kong has thrived as an international centre for finance, commerce, trade, corporate headquarters, investment, transportation, logistics, and many, many more areas. But of course, you will all be aware that over the last 2 or 3 years, Hong Kong has suffered both the social unrest and the violence on the streets, and like everywhere else, the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. But the good news is, with the double safeguards put in place, social stability has been restored. And what this has done, importantly for business, is safeguarded the business environment. So if you'd like to know more of the background to that, do take a look at the report on Hong Kong's business environment, because it goes through the detail and sets out the facts. In talking to companies, which I do every day, as well as international organisations and the foreign chambers of commerce here in Hong Kong, I can assure you that they all tell us that they're confident about Hong Kong's future. So let's just remind ourselves about the unique and robust inherent strengths of this great city. First off, obviously, we're located right at the very heart of Asia. But from a business point of view, there's many factors that make it such a fantastic place to do business, but also to live. The rule of law and judicial independence is very important indeed. Of course, Hong Kong as a free port has that free flow of goods, capital, talent and information. So very vital to businesses in this day and age. We have a low and simple tax regime. We have a robust financial system, sound regulatory frameworks, world-class infrastructure and digital facilities. We've also got a really deep talent pool, very international in nature, very global in outlook. So it's our people that help businesses on the ground in Hong Kong tap into the opportunities across the whole of the region. And of course, we're Asia's most international and cosmopolitan city. It's a great place to live in addition to do business. It's a safe city. In 2019, when we had the social unrest, we fell to around 20th in terms of being a safe city. But now we're back at number 8. That's very important, obviously, to families living here. But Hong Kong has also got a great environment in which to live outside work. Our mountains, our beaches, and the country parks. So these are many of the reasons why Hong Kong is such a popular destination for investment from around the world. I said I was going to share with you the latest findings of a couple of our surveys. And this is the big survey that we do with the Census and Statistics Department, which looks at the totality of the international and mainland business community in Hong Kong. You can see here that the total number of companies stood at 9,049. This was just published 2 days ago. That is a record high. This belies the media narrative of an exodus of companies from Hong Kong. The facts tell us otherwise. Hong Kong continues to be a great location for regional headquarters, and the major sources of investment are the mainland, Japan, US, UK, and Singapore. I'd just like to pick up on Singapore because very often people ask about Hong Kong compared to Singapore. I think the fact that Singapore, a country with a population much the same as Hong Kong, is our 5th largest source of investment, says something about how valuable Hong Kong is to businesses within ASEAN. The major lines of businesses are also shown here, but I won't go into the detail of that. And the good news goes on. Our startup ecosystem is going from strength to strength. The total number of startups, again in a survey released a couple of days ago, stand at 3,755. Again, that's a record high. Also a record high of the number of staff employed by those startups. You can see the top business sectors, fintech, e-commerce, professional and consultancy services, ICT and design. A really fast growing area is in biotech and life sciences. I think another thing really worth pointing out is how international the makeup of our startup community is. 28% of founders come from outside Hong Kong. To give you a little bit of a flavour, you can see here that we have got 600 plus fintechs in Hong Kong. So it's a very, very vibrant environment indeed. Now, I'd like to talk about those unlimited opportunities that I mentioned earlier on, as I describe them, the routes to growth. So for companies all over the world, in every sector, Hong Kong offers a very wide range of opportunity. Opportunities in Hong Kong itself. Hong Kong is a mature economy, sophisticated consumers, sophisticated businesses. Beyond Hong Kong, the Greater Bay Area is a really, really important market for companies around the world. And I'll go into more depth on that in a moment. But of course, many companies use Hong Kong to also tap into the wider opportunities in our country, China. And there are some really important economic clusters beyond the Greater Bay Area. If we look at the Yangtze River Delta, JJJ in and around Beijing, Chengdu, Chongqing in the west of China, but many more. And at Invest Hong Kong, we can help you understand what those opportunities mean for your business. But because of our central location within Asia, Hong Kong also enables businesses to tap into the opportunities in ASEAN, to those fast-growing countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Singapore, and of course the other member states, 10 of them in ASEAN. And finally, there are opportunities for some of the companies that we're working with under the Belt and Road Initiative. The other important thing I think to draw to your attention is that these opportunities are going to be further fueled by RCEP. And that really will mean that we'll see more trade and investment flows within Asia rather than the more traditional east-west flows. I'd now like to talk a little bit about the 14th five-year plan, which is a very, very important master plan for the whole of the development of the country. I think the first point is that Hong Kong continues to play an important and irreplaceable role in the development of the country. Hong Kong has a dedicated chapter in the 14th five-year plan. Commercially, there are 8 areas that are set out, 4 traditional sectors and 4 emerging sectors. So on the traditional side, our role as an international financial centre, number 3 in the world. Our role as an international transport centre, we have a very significant port, and the airport is also one of the leading airports globally. Actually, the number 1 for cargo globally this year. We're also a well-established international trade centre, and on top of that, an international centre for legal and dispute resolution services. But Hong Kong is changing. It's changing by being more closely aligned with the overall development of the country. And there are 4 emerging sectors where new opportunities will be appearing in the months and years to come that I'd like to draw your attention to. So Hong Kong's role as an international aviation hub. Importantly, I think for so many of the companies that we're working with, Hong Kong's role as the international innovation and technology hub of China. Very closely aligned with that is also Hong Kong's role as an intellectual property trading centre. And finally, in a rather different sphere, Hong Kong playing this role to take Chinese culture to the world, but also to bring culture from the rest of the world to Hong Kong. Now, all of these areas have detailed fact sheets available. So rather than bore you with sectors that won't be relevant to your particular business, we will share with you the slides, and you can take a look at each of the fact sheets on these 8 different areas. And there's lots of really useful information there, both on the policy side and also on the opportunity side. So I do encourage you to take a look at those. I've mentioned the Greater Bay Area a couple of times. Officially, it's called the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, but most people call it GBA these days. It comprises the 2 special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau and 9 cities in Guangdong. I think it is one of the most exciting and significant economic developments on the planet. I'd go as far as to suggest it is too big and significant to ignore. Let me share some of the reasons why. Firstly, it is one of the world's largest and most competitive bay areas. There's a population of 86 million people, all living within roughly 1 hour travelling of each other. The GDP of the Greater Bay Area stood at $1.67 trillion in 2020. That makes it the 9th largest economy in the world, roughly equivalent to Canada. So to my point about being significant, large, material. What's more, it's also home to the richest, most affluent and population within China, with the GDP per capita at 20,000 US dollars. But it's also very, very high potential indeed. The region is also home, though, to some of the country's most advanced, innovative and tech-led businesses. And that's really important for international companies in terms of partnering and serving the needs of those companies, whether it's in GBA or as they go global to the rest of the world. Within GBA, Hong Kong has a very important role to play. It is the most international city. And this slide really covers off at a big picture level how I see it. For businesses that are in the B2C space, you can use Hong Kong to meet the needs of 86 million increasingly wealthy consumers. That could be in financial services or consumer products or food. And that point again about them being very accessible, roughly 1 hour travelling between each city pair. On the B2B side, it's those leading and innovative enterprises that make for the vibrancy of the economy. But GBA shouldn't be looked at in isolation. It's obviously part of the overall development of our country. So looking at the opportunities from GBA into other economic clusters. But also I think it's very important to look at GBA in terms of the outbound investment, those high-tech companies within GBA going to the rest of the world. So for those of you in financial and professional services, working with those companies is a fantastic opportunity. But it's also a great opportunity for those of you who want to partner with them within GBA. One of the most important trends that I see in the developing intra-Asia trade investment flows is the connectivity between GBA and ASEAN in both directions. So we're beginning to see this shift of economic growth to Asia. And part of this shift is the growing trade and investment flows north-south rather than the traditional east-west flows that we're probably all more familiar with. So I'd encourage you to really pay attention to how this is developing. And I can assure you it's going to be further fueled by RCEP. I mentioned the Chiang Hai, Shenzhen, Hong Kong Model Service Industry Cooperation Zone. I know it's a little bit of a mouthful, but it's really very important. It's an integral part of the overall development of Hong Kong's economy, but also the Greater Bay Area as a whole. It's an important measure for further opening up of the country, and it will be a test platform for deepening reforms and promoting innovation, again in the context of the country. It's also very significant because of its scale. Currently, Chiang Hai is around 15 kilometres squared. It will grow to 120 kilometres squared. That's 1.5 times the size of Hong Kong Island. For those of you who know Hong Kong well, you'll appreciate how big this area will be. And it will be the cross-fertilisation between the best of Hong Kong and the best of GBA. I'd also mention that there's another closely aligned policy, which is the development of Hung Chin, which is on the western side of the Pearl River Delta. And there's a strong axis between Macau and Hung Chin. But that also presents opportunities for international companies moving into GBA. Going into a little bit more detail on Chiang Hai, there's really two broad themes where Chiang Hai will pioneer new measures. Firstly, building a platform for deepening that reform and innovation. And secondly, building Chiang Hai as a high-level opening up gateway hub for companies from around the world to access the markets of GBA and beyond that, the rest of China. I'd now like to turn to the policy address. This was delivered by the Chief Executive on Wednesday. It really is an ambitious policy blueprint to tackle the housing problems that we've got, but also what runs through it from a commercial point of view is the importance of the development of the tech sector and innovation. One of the big plans is a new metropolis that will be built at the northern boundary of Hong Kong near Shenzhen. And that will be both a region for new homes, but also from an economic and commercial point of view, it will be an innovation and tech corridor, a real new engine of economic growth. The policy address also sets out very clearly how Hong Kong will integrate and align itself much more closely with national development, leveraging the pace of reform, development and scale of the Chinese economy. I'd now like to share with you just a few of the commercial opportunities that might be of interest to at least some of you. After the bullet point, there's a number in brackets. That's the paragraph in the policy address. On the tech side, there's going to be a very significant expansion of the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, adding 88 hectares. So this will provide world-class facilities and consequently, obviously, many more opportunities for tech ventures. One of the most exciting things that I think is in the policy address is the announcement of the development of an InnoLife health tech hub. And this really will spur drug R&D and clinical trials in Hong Kong. We've got fantastic universities. So the aim will be to use that fundamental research, working with businesses to commercialize it. So the translational research. But on the clinical trial side, we have got a unique environment in Hong Kong. Fantastic data from the hospital authority and recognition of the agencies around the world that approve drugs. The US, Europe, and of course the mainland. So this, I think, will be very significant going forward. Like many places in the world, Hong Kong has made a commitment to net zero. In our case, it's 2050. And that will bring many more opportunities for companies in areas such as waste management, green buildings, green transportation. We have got three key areas where we need to reduce emissions. First is on power generation. We're moving from coal to LNG at the moment, but the future will have to be a mix of renewables, possibly green hydrogen. So we'll be looking for companies that can contribute to meeting that goal. Secondly, the transportation in Hong Kong is the second largest emitter. That's cars, taxis, buses, commercial vehicles. So there will be a big move to EV, batteries, lots of opportunities again for leading edge technology from around the world to develop the market in Hong Kong. And then on the waste management side, we've committed to no further landfills. So we will need more facilities that could be waste to energy or recycling. So again, fantastic opportunities for companies from other parts of the world. On the autonomous vehicle side, Hong Kong will also be looking to do R&D and also enable field trials. So this again is an exciting new area where clearly there are lots of developments going on across the world. As I mentioned earlier, Hong Kong remains a very important global port. Allied with that, obviously, Hong Kong is home to many ship owners. We have a fantastic ship leasing tax incentive, and Hong Kong is also a really important centre for arbitration, and it's been recognised by BIMCO as a centre for such arbitration. So lots of opportunities for ship owners, ship leasing companies, financiers, the lawyers, the accountants, and arbitration companies in this field. We're also going to be investing in a new second advanced manufacturing centre, which will further our reindustrialisation efforts. So it will provide the talent, the technology, and the infrastructure to move this along. So this will open up really exciting opportunities for high value and tech intensive manufacturers. Of course, Hong Kong is well known as being a leading international financial centre, and we will continue to leverage many of the mechanisms that are in place between Hong Kong and the mainland: Stock Connect, Bond Connect, Wealth Management Connect, and we'll be building upon those. We're also doing some new work around family offices, and the policy address sets out the ambition to have tax concessions for family offices. But it's not limited to traditional financial services. Fintech, as I mentioned earlier, is a very, very vibrant sector in Hong Kong. I'd mentioned the GBA sandbox, which is going to test cross-border fintech applications. It really is unique, and it's a first. If we look at Hong Kong, there's great opportunities in big data monetization and open API fintechs. But there are many, many more on top of this. And if fintech is your area of interest, our annual Hong Kong Fintech Week will be taking place in November. So take a look at our website for that. There's also going to be new opportunities on the back of Hong Kong being an international legal and dispute resolution centre in Asia Pacific. And of course, that's very closely allied with the enhancement of our role as an international financial centre. Going back to the port, but also more broadly logistics, there are moves to make Hong Kong's port a smart port, improving cross-boundary connection to the rest of GBA, including commercial data interchange. So this will be providing more opportunities for a range of companies, including regional sourcing and e-commerce companies, for Greater China and indeed for ASEAN. Again, it goes back to this point about the changing investment flows and trade flows being more north-south. We will see the expansion of convention and exhibition facilities and the development of new cultural initiatives. And so this will provide new opportunities in the context of a GBA picture. We've announced plans to set up a new culture, sports and tourism bureau, which will bring together quite allied sectors of the economy. And again, that will drive more opportunities for companies, for instance, in the international event space. On the cultural front, as I mentioned earlier on, we want Hong Kong to be positioned as the centre for taking Chinese culture to the world, but bringing cultures from around the world to Hong Kong and to China. And the Culture Bureau will be driving that forward in the months and years to come. Allied to that again is the leveraging of technologies in the art tech space. It's an exciting area, lots going on in Hong Kong and of course in many other places around the world. So that's given you just a flavour of the breadth of the opportunity within the policy address, but there's lots more. If you want to find out more about what the policy address, what Hong Kong means for your business, here are some resources that you can take a look at. First of all, that report on Hong Kong's business environment. Secondly, the policy address itself, and you can look at those paragraphs that are mentioned. Then take a look at the Invest Hong Kong website. Lots of useful information, practical information around setting up and growing in Hong Kong. And we've got dedicated sub-websites that go into more detail on a number of areas. The Greater Bay Area, for instance. And on that, I'd also mention that my colleague David Wong does some fantastic short reads on LinkedIn. So if you want to know what's happening in GBA, what's happening in each city, what the commercial opportunities are, do follow David on LinkedIn. We've then got sub-websites on fintech, on the Start Me Up program that we run at Invest Hong Kong, on family offices, on talent attraction. We want high quality talent from around the world. Innovation and technology, as I've said, is one of the most exciting areas. So lots of information in that part of the website. But also in more specialised areas on aircraft leasing and ship leasing. So I hope in the last few minutes I've given you a flavour of the breadth of opportunity that Hong Kong offers. Hong Kong into GBA, Hong Kong into China, Hong Kong into ASEAN, and indeed beyond. I know I haven't given justice to all of the detail, but if you would like to know more, I'd encourage you to get in touch with your local contact. So go to our website, the Contact Us page, you can put your country location in, and it will give you the contact information of the local office. Alternatively, if you'd like to get in touch with me, connect with me on LinkedIn, my QR code is here. So once again, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that I've tantalised you about the future lying in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for your updates and sharing. This is the end of the webinar. For questions no answers, so the Invest Hong Kong team will follow up in due course. So we do appreciate your feedback, and please spare a few minutes to complete a simple survey by scanning the QR code. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.